What's up everybody? How you doing today? We are doing the third part, not on the McLean edger though. We're talking about the boom sprayer, answering all your questions on how I built mine so you can build yours. Let's get to it. Here we have it right there. There is my boom sprayer. This piece of equipment here gets the single most comments anytime it's shown in a video from people wanting to know, where did I buy it? When I reply that I didn't buy it, I built it myself, they ask, will you build one for me? Or if they're more, I guess, adventurous or more the DIY handy person type, then they ask, how did I do certain things? And I can point them to two videos, the previous two videos I've done in the past. The first one is dedicated entirely, solely to how I sized the pump, the three nozzles, how I did that. What you need to do is a fantastic in-depth video. Be forewarned though, there is quite a bit of math in it, nothing too difficult. You've probably learned how to do it last year when you were homeschooling your kids due to COVID, and it's easier than the math they were teaching you there with all the boxes and lines. But definitely check out that video if you want to know how to size the pump, because this pump is not the same pump that came with the tank. The second video I did dealt with the electrical system, the wiring. It's a 12 volt system, runs on a 12 volt 12 amp hour battery, just a lead acid normal battery. I did a dedicated charging port. It has a main power switch as well as the actual power switch that engages the spray. It is a standard motorcycle switch that I purchased off of Amazon. Other people have used a momentary switch where you have to keep holding it down to keep it spraying. That works just as well. However, with my lawn and maneuverability, I felt that not having to hold it down just gave me one less thing to concentrate on. One of the top questions I receive about the sprayer is the frame itself. What is it? Well, the frame comes from an 80-pound Lesco spreader. I also get quite a few, I guess, not necessarily bad things. However, people are, hey, Lesco 80-pound spreaders are really freaking expensive, and you parted one out for a boom sprayer? Well, not necessarily. I was fortunate enough to have a friend that had several just beat to snot Lesco spreaders. That's how I got the frame for this. Now, if you can't find a Lesco frame, there are plenty of other options. You just have to get creative with it. The things you need to look for though, I'm going to break it down into 3 different items, and that is, the number one thing is you want to make sure the frame itself is sturdy enough to support the weight. My tank's a 9-gallon tank. That weighs quite a bit once you get it filled with your water and all your solutions. I've seen some other people put 15-gallon tanks. That's even heavier. So you want a sturdy and solid frame that's not going to buckle under the pressure. Second thing you want to look for in a frame to mount a tank to is maneuverability. If you look here, got the 2 wheels. It pivots nice and easy to maneuver things in and out of. It is good to go. So number 2, maneuverability. Make sure that you're able to maneuver the lawn, because if it's hard to turn or just the wheels aren't large enough to overcome any obstacles, if your lawn is not perfectly, butter smooth and flat, that'll just put more work on you, and you won't have an enjoyable experience while using something you built yourself. And the third option is make sure it's sized appropriately. Get an idea of what tank you're going to use and the dimensions of that tank before committing to a frame, or if you've already committed to a frame, make sure your tank purchase is compatible with that frame. I did, like I said, contemplate using the 50-pound frame for this. However, the size of this down here, right in there, it's a little bit smaller, and I would have had my subframe exposed. It would not have fit as well and not as well balanced. Complaint or criticism of this design was, that looks kind of top heavy. Well, yeah, it is easy to tip over if you're not paying attention or you're weak armed, and I can push it perfectly fine with a torn rotator cuff. So if I can do that, anyone can do that. But the greatest thing about having that tank up high is you do not have to bend over, because I know people don't like bending over. That's just an absolute inconvenience to them. If you can stand upright to do anything, that's a win. Okay, next up, questions on the tank that I received. What kind of tank is it? I purchased the tank from Rural King. It cost me about 50 bucks. It came with a little spray wand and a 1 gallon pump that I think was like 50 PSI. I scrapped all that crap anyway because I needed something better. But this is an ATV style sprayer. And what's really cool about that is it came with a bunch of straps that attach to pre-threaded inserts in the tank. And so when people ask, how did I mount this to the frame? Or how did I mount the fancy metal work in the back? I used all the pre-threaded like inserts or holes, whatever you want to call them, and the design kind of formed around where those were mounted. I used all those pre-threaded locations for supports for the boom itself, and as well as the next bit, my back section where all the plumbing and the pump is located. And then another note on this tank, however, though, is I can't find it anymore. I can't find it at Rural King. There was an Amazon listing where it was a little bit more. It was like 80 bucks for the exact same thing with just a different brand, and it's not available. However, all the tanks are pretty similar. They're all made in China. People just put their own brand on it, kind of like I did. You can find a tank that'll work. I've seen a lot of people using 15-gallon tanks with a different style frame, and it's worked absolutely amazing. Okay, now on to the fun bits, the actual boom itself, and then the back where the pump resides, along with my filter and my pressure relief valve and my pressure gauge. How did all that get mounted? Well, I told you already about those pre-threaded holes to get everything mounted to, and repurposing those for my design. For the boom itself, it is just a piece of 3/4 inch conduit. You can look at that in my previous video with all the parts on what I used for that. But then going around now to the back of the sprayer, this one I actually got a lot of questions on. I was like, what is that black U-shaped thing? What did you do for that? All of that, and along with here, these supports are all just stock aluminum like angle pieces or flat aluminum bar purchased at either Home Depot or Lowe's. They're not too terribly expensive, or at least they weren't several years ago when I built this sprayer back here. Let's pull up the back of the sprayer real quick to show you a picture. I used a piece of the angle aluminum. I cut a couple 45s in there, like kind of like a miter in it, to where I lined it up with the mount holes. There are 3 mount holes, 1 in the center and the top, 2 in the bottom. Drilled those to secure it. Then I took a piece of aluminum bar, and this is where creativity comes into play, and this is extremely important to just be creative, think outside the box. I then needed to bend this metal, but I don't really have any metal working tools, so I used a bunch of cheap C-clamps from Home Depot, and then edger blades for my edgers. By clamping those on there, that allowed me the support needed to where when I went to bend that aluminum bar, it bent where I wanted it to bend, and it was actually relatively easy to do. Didn't need to heat up the metal or anything. It just took a little bit of strength. And then to attach that, I simply drilled it out, and then I picked up a pop rivet gun from Harbor Freight. It was like 10 or 15 bucks, I can't remember. Drilled those holes out and pop riveted on. Everything dealing with the aluminum, my support braces here for the boom, my anti-sway bars I like to call them, all of those are just like thin 1/8 inch, maybe 1/16, I can't remember, by 1/2 inch aluminum bar that I bent and formed to provide the support needed. Absolutely just intuitive way to go about it, working with the tools I have available. Now, it was all done by hand in my garage with clamps, edger blades, and brute force that only I can provide. Attaching the actual tank to the frame. How did I go about doing that? Well, this is an ATV style tank. There are pre-molded kind of grooves to sit on like the rack of an ATV, and those almost lined up. They didn't quite line up, but I did have the pre-threaded mounts on the bottom. What I did was I used more just stock aluminum pieces to make a subframe to where I could make the mounting holes to where the hopper for the Lesco hopper would attach to the frame. I have the subframe that attaches to that, so I have that connected. Then I have some crossbars going across attached and then pre-drilled that go to the mounting holes in the bottom of the tank. Super simple, super effective. It's held up perfectly fine. I'm on 3+ years of using the sprayer. Never had an issue with anything on the sprayer except for wear and tear on the battery because I keep it in the shed over winter, which I shouldn't do. I should disconnect the battery. Speaking of the battery, how did I go about mounting that with my custom battery tray? Let's take a look at that right now. And again, what did I use? Stock aluminum pieces from Home Depot. I used some of the angle pieces, some thin bar pieces, and sheet aluminum that I bent, again using edger blades and clamps, sizing it up around once I purchased the battery so it drops in and fits nicely. I made a fancy little lever at the time, not really sure how it would go, and I left one side of the box open a little bit, but then the lever just sits down and locks everything into place. It's a super simple design, just folding aluminum with edger blades was a little tricky, but it got the job done. I've rolled over the edges and hammered those down so you don't have to worry about cuts or scrapes or nicks or anything. It is completely 100% safe and sponsor ready, so you don't have to worry about lawsuits and get lawyers involved. That's the battery tray, and it's held up pretty well. Now, I will say I did have one little issue with it, is over time the aluminum is soft, it's malleable. And the problem came about when I went and took the sprayer over to my father-in-law's to do some stuff for him. He has a huge, like 26,000 square foot lawn. The bumpiness of his lawn, the battery box was bouncing up and down and it softened. So I do need to look at possibly redoing the battery box, and I'm thinking about some other ideas I've came up with since the original build and improvements I'd like to make, and I'll share those with you in the future when I do them. So that's it for the main questions I've received on this sprayer. There's one left, however, that deserves a dedicated video that will be coming very, very soon. And that is this overkill for my lawn? I have a 5,000 square foot lawn. My front yard's around 1,380 square feet. The rest is in the back. It is getting an expansion soon because the pool is gone. Most people would think 5,000 square feet, you can get away with a backpack sprayer. And while that is true, a backpack sprayer, while super awesome, super effective, and a great upgrade over a hose end sprayer or a smaller, like 1 or 2 gallon hand can, the options I have with this are expanded and allow me to do greater things that I can't do with a 4 gallon backpack sprayer without having to do multiple fill-ups and take, frankly, more time. Everything about the boom sprayer is saving time, maximizing efficiency, and letting me get on to other things that are more important. So stay tuned for that video in the future. Closing thoughts on this though are anyone can really build these. If you have any more questions on it, please do not hesitate. You can drop them down below. You can email me, hit me up via social media. I will be more than happy to answer them for you and help guide you along if you do want to build one of these, because building something is so satisfying just from the fact of you're learning something new. The rewards of doing something yourself and seeing the results are absolutely spectacular. At the same time, if you have any crazy ideas on upgrades that may make this better, I'd also love to hear about them. Drop them below. I got an Instagram message yesterday actually talking about adding foam markers with a separate little foam tank running along the side of the boom that drops little foam droplets to see where I've sprayed before, and that's actually a really fantastic idea and something I'm going to look into. However, I got to figure out how it would be mounted, and it may be easier than I think because I'm going to be redoing probably the battery, and at least I want to add a separate little spray wand for different applications if I want to fertilize flowers without dragging 5 gallon buckets around. But any ideas or anything cool you'd like to see with that, please drop them below. I'd love to hear them. Any criticisms as well, or any negative things, put them down below, because you can't learn and grow if you do not foster a two-way discussion. It can't be a one-way street of one person just spitting their ideas and claiming they're being censored when someone disagrees with what their content says. I encourage all forms of discourse as long as it remains civil, YouTube guidelines followed, and you're not doing something that could promote harm to another individual. So drop those down below. So with that, it's Mike, Real Low Dad, in the black shirt when it's hot outside. Ooh, yeah, I'm sweaty. So it's time to cool off. But yeah, there she is, my luscious locks of justice. And we'll see you again next time. It's gonna be a whole lot of fun.
I ran up a check, I might do it again. Enemies close, have me thinking they're friends. 10 toes down, I'll be free until the end. Crib outside the city, I don't feel safe in my hands. Took so many years, I'm just waiting for the wins. I'm in debt to no one but the one who took my sins. I do it for real, there's no reason to pretend. If I do it once, I do it again.